Max Verstappen endured a hard start to the 2026 season, and talks about a potential exit from Red Bull have already commenced. With Toto Wolff being added to the picture, a surprising twist of events could see Max switch teams as early as next season. But with so many at stake, and with the negotiating table being way different now compared to 2025, Max's issues have deepened, and finding a seat outside of Red Bull will prove to be much harder than originally anticipated. The situation in Red Bull is becoming critical. Max Verstappen is struggling to find performance with the RB22, and the old talks about him going to Mercedes have been resurfaced. But it's not without a valid reason Toto Wolff spoke about Russell wanting Max as his next teammate just to prove that he's the better driver, and this is a statement that can be understood in many ways. For example, it's a great way to poach Verstappen to their camp, because now that they have the upper hand compared to the rest of the grid, Mercedes should be the hunted side of this deal, and Verstappen knows that perfectly well. This is where all of his problems start. Despite having 4 championships, he is not in a position to negotiate his contract, as he is not in a power position. Last year, Verstappen had the cards in his hands, and he decided to choose loyalty. But from this point on, many would say that was a mistake, and they would be in the right. Mercedes has absolutely nailed the regulations, whereas Red Bull is still trying to find where they stand in this cycle. And if Verstappen were to join Mercedes, it would definitely not be under the rules that he would have set back in 2025. Nevertheless, Toto Wolff stirred up the pot yet again by talking about George Russell's preferences, stating that the Brit would much rather have Verstappen as his teammate than anyone else on the grid. Elaborating further on this, Wolff said, "I think George is saying that because Max is widely considered as the best in the business, and Russell wants to show that Max is not the best in the business, but it's him. I'm going to keep myself out of this discussion. We're just in the beginning of the season with George and Kimi, and I am super happy with that. But this is just the beginning of the talks." Wolff didn't actually stay away from the entirety of this topic. The Austrian team principal went on to talk about Verstappen's current situation in Red Bull, stating that the 4-time world champion is in a horror show. And we all know what those words mean. It's a clear and diplomatic way to lure him into Mercedes. It's a very interesting game that Toto is playing here, because while he knows he doesn't need Verstappen as much as he thought last year, he would be much pleased to have him in his team and continue the legacy of the Dutchman. But there is a big twist in Russell's contract that could see him exit Mercedes much earlier than anticipated and leave a wide open seat for Verstappen. According to Blick, Russell's contract is a 1+1, which means that if certain criteria are met, then the Brit would see an extension of his contract. So far, we are not seeing anything that hints he isn't meeting the criteria by the Silver Arrows. Quite the contrary, he has 1 race win, 1 sprint race win, and 1 P2 finish. So I don't know how much better it can get than that. Furthermore, he proved that he is the next franchise face of the team, but nevertheless, Kimi Antonelli's contract is different. Blick reports that the Italian driver is bound with Mercedes until the end of 2029. So in other words, if a change in the driver's seat were to be done in the Brackley-based squad, contractually speaking, Russell is the one who is in bigger trouble compared to Antonelli. Previously, we believed that Verstappen should only think about an exit from Red Bull because of the incompetence of the team and all of the scandals that they've found themselves in. But now that the new leadership and powertrain division branded by Ford haven't reassured us otherwise, this belief stands firm. The Dutchman has even talked about retiring if the FIA doesn't change certain rules, as he wants to compete in Le Mans and Spa 24 hours. But at the end of the day, if he gets the chance to drive in Mercedes before the end of his career, then who says no to this? Red Bull would be forced into a rebuild mode, and Mercedes will have some tough decisions to make in order to land the signature of a 4-time world champion. It's not a secret that Russell wants Verstappen as his teammate, but to compare their achievements from this point of view is a bit ridiculous. I don't want to throw shade at the progress that Mercedes made, quite the contrary, but we are not really assured that Wolff has given up on Verstappen fully. All of these statements and the continuous talk about how he is in trouble bring us to the point where these two would either pair up along this era or Verstappen could be pushed into early retirement. It would be very bad for the sport to see Max go at such an early stage of his career, but I don't really think there is any other way if Red Bull does not improve their car. And this is why Wolff believes that all of the cards are in his hands right now. Nobody can convince him otherwise. However, he is also aware of the fact that big sacrifices need to be made in order to land Max. Yes, Red Bull is struggling right now, and if this advantage of Mercedes persists, then Toto would be more than happy to keep the duo of Russell and Antonelli moving forward. But the reality is that Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, and potentially even Aston Martin can and will close that gap further down the line sooner or later. That's precisely why Wolff needs to always keep the door open for Max. If things suddenly go south for his team, he can call up Max's agent or his father, Jos, and try to secure his services when it matters the most. Again, the risk of Verstappen retiring from the sport, that is something that would hurt a big fan base of the sport, and it's in the interest of everyone for him to stay. So Toto might have a much bigger burden on his shoulders with these latest developments than we could think. Max spoke about leaving F1 because of the dissatisfaction he's had with the regulations. Further elaborating, I don't want to leave really. I wish I had a bit more fun for sure, but I am also doing other stuff that is a lot of fun. I get to race the Nürburgring, Nordschleife. I hope in the coming years I can do Spa, hopefully Le Mans. So I am combining stuff to find other stuff that I find really fun as well. Another sign that we need to talk about is the signing of Max Verstappen and Mercedes in the GT3 championship. Hold your horses. I didn't imply that this automatically means Max will join Mercedes in F1. These two are very different competitions and it's not even close. But if Max creates certain friendships and collects certain awards from Mercedes in GT3, he could start the belief that there are better organizations than Red Bull that would serve the purpose he's been looking for a very long period of time, revolving around consistency. So far, what we could understand is that Red Bull is the team that needs to fix all of their problems before they start acting on keeping Verstappen at bay. The situation is far from perfect. The engine isn't reliable. And for the first time after Ricciardo, Verstappen has a teammate that's very close to him. It can only mean one thing. The car is extremely bad and it's not giving him anything positive to work with. Will that be the case with Mercedes? It's up to them to answer this question, as I do believe that the four-time world champion will find it very hard to deny an offer from Toto if it comes down the line. Do you think Max deserves to replace either Russell or Antonelli from 2027 onwards? And if so, which driver do you think is more in danger of losing his seat in Mercedes? Let us know in the comments below.